This is a story about dignity, after life quietly takes back what it once gave. Arthur Campbell stood in the doorway of the office longer than necessary, holding his coat in his hands. The plaque on the wall still had his name on it. Gold letters. Clean. Official. He had walked past it every morning for nearly a year, and each time it felt slightly unreal, like something borrowed, not owned. Today, the feeling was stronger. People congratulated him again as he passed through the hall. Smiles, nods, familiar words about how far he'd come, how well things had turned out for him at last. Arthur smiled back, careful not to linger, careful not to show the tightness in his chest. Success had arrived late for him, and when it did, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like balance, fragile, easily disturbed. At his desk, Arthur straightened a stack of papers that didn't need straightening. He noticed how quiet the room was. Not empty, just thinner, as if the air itself had stepped back. He tried to tell himself it was nothing, but the thought came anyway, uninvited and steady. Why does this feel like it could disappear? Arthur had waited most of his life for this kind of stability. Respect, a role that made sense of the years behind him. People finally asked for his opinion, trusted his judgment, said his name with weight. And yet, standing there, coat still in his hands, Arthur felt the same old instinct he'd learned long ago on the road. Don't get too comfortable. Don't lean your full weight on something that might move. At home, Sharon had noticed it before he did. "You don't talk about work the way you used to," she said one evening, not accusing, just observant. Arthur shrugged. There's not much to say. That wasn't true. There was a great deal to say. But somewhere beneath the success, beneath the recognition, a quiet unease had begun to form. The sense that the ground under his feet wasn't as solid as everyone believed. Arthur sat on the edge of the bed that night, listening to the city through the window. The same city that had ignored him for decades. The same city that now seemed to be nodding back. He should have felt secure. Instead, he felt alert, as if something had already started shifting, not loudly, not violently, but enough to make him realize that whatever this success was, it wasn't the end of the story. The first sign came quietly, an email that didn't quite make sense. Arthur read it twice, then a third time, standing by the kitchen counter while Sharon poured coffee. The words were polite, careful, full of phrases that sounded temporary, but didn't feel that way. Reevaluation, structural changes, short-term adjustment. Arthur folded the phone screen dark and slipped it into his pocket. "What is it?" Sharon asked. "Nothing yet," he said. That answer had become a habit, not a lie exactly, but a way of holding things still a little longer. At work, the atmosphere shifted before anyone explained it. Meetings were shorter, doors closed more often. People stopped lingering in the hallway. The plaque with his name was still on the wall, but now it felt like a photograph of something already past. Arthur kept doing his job the same way he always had. Arrived early, listened more than he spoke, carried the weight that others quietly handed him. But something had changed inside him. Success had made him careful. He caught himself thinking in terms he'd never used before. What if, how long should I prepare? The very thing he had waited decades for had taught him a new kind of fear. One afternoon, he stayed late to finish a report that no one had asked for. As he shut down his computer, he realized the office was empty. The quiet pressed against him in a way it hadn't before. Was this what it meant to belong? Or was it always conditional? At home, Arthur found himself watching Sharon more closely. The way she moved through the apartment. The steadiness she carried without announcing it. He wondered if she sensed what he hadn't said. She did. "You don't have to protect me from it," she said one night, her voice gentle but direct. "Whatever it is." Arthur looked at his hands. Older now, capable, unsteady in ways that surprised him. "I thought once I got here," he said slowly, "I'd stop feeling like the ground could give way." Sharon reached for him. "Maybe that feeling doesn't go away. Maybe it just changes what you lean on." Arthur nodded, but the thought stayed unsettled. Because for the first time, he wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of losing something he'd finally allowed himself to trust. And somewhere beneath that fear, another realization was forming, quieter, heavier, harder to name. If this success disappeared, he didn't yet know who he would be without it. The meeting lasted less than 15 minutes. Arthur had imagined it longer, more formal. He had imagined explanations, diagrams, maybe even apologies shaped like careful sentences. Instead, there was a table, two people, a folder that stayed closed. They spoke calmly, respectfully, as if discussing whether that could not be changed. The organization was restructuring. Funding had shifted. Priorities were being reassessed. His role, valuable, appreciated, was no longer sustainable. Arthur listened without interruption. He noticed how clearly he could hear the hum of the lights overhead, how his breathing stayed even, how his hands rested flat on the table, as if they belonged there. When it was over, he thanked them. He even meant it. Outside, the air felt sharper than it should have. The city moved the way it always did, indifferent, efficient, alive. Arthur stood still for a moment before walking. The success he had finally reached hadn't shattered. It had simply been removed. At home, Sharon was at the table when he came in. She looked up once and knew. Arthur nodded. They didn't speak right away. There was nothing urgent to say. No decision to make yet. Just the weight of what had happened, settling into the room like dusk. Later, alone, Arthur sat on the edge of the bed and felt something unfamiliar move through him. Not panic, not anger, hollowness. He reached for the thought that had carried him through years of waiting. Stay steady, keep faith, it will make sense, and found it thinner now, stretched in a way that frightened him. Was the faith only for getting here? Had it ended when the reward ended? That night, Arthur dreamed of driving empty streets. No pasillos, no destination, just motion without purpose. He woke before dawn, heart steady, mind unsettled. For the first time in a long while, Arthur did not know what the road ahead asked of him, only that the version of himself who had finally arrived had just been taken away. The days that followed did not collapse the way Arthur expected them to. They thinned. Mornings arrived without urgency. No reason to rush. No place that needed him at a precise hour. Arthur found himself standing at the window longer than usual, watching the city wake without him. He missed the structure more than the work. At first, he tried to replace it. He updated his resume, made careful lists, reached out to a few contacts who responded kindly but vaguely. Everyone meant well. No one had anything concrete. Arthur realized something uncomfortable then. The success he had lost had given him a name. Without it, he felt oddly anonymous again, not invisible but undefined. One afternoon, he took the plaque down from the shelf. The gold letters still caught the light. He held it in his hands longer than necessary, feeling its weight. Was this what I had been building toward? Something that could be lifted away so easily? He didn't feel bitterness. That surprised him. Instead, he felt exposed. At dinner, Sharon watched him quietly. "You don't have to explain yourself," she said. "Not to me." "I know," Arthur replied. "I just don't know how to explain myself to me." That night, he walked the neighborhood alone. The same streets he'd driven past for years without really seeing. He noticed small things. A corner store closing early. A man watering plants on a fire escape. The steady rhythm of ordinary lives continuing without acknowledgement. Arthur understood then that his loss hadn't taken his ability to care. It hadn't taken his patience, or his attention, or the way people trusted him with small, honest things. Those hadn't come from the job. They had come from him. The realization didn't comfort him immediately, but steadied him. And in that steadiness, Arthur made a quiet choice. Not to chase replacement success, not to demand meaning from the loss, but to remain intact, to move carefully, to speak honestly, to let faith exist without a promise attached. For the first time since the meeting, Arthur felt something loosen. Not relief, but dignity returning to its rightful place. Arthur never found another position like the one he lost, and slowly, that stopped feeling like a failure. He began helping in small ways at first. A neighbor asked if he could drive her to an appointment. An old colleague called, not with an offer, but with a question. What would you do here? Arthur answered without urgency, without trying to prove anything. People still trusted him. That surprised him more than the loss ever had. At home, life settled into a different rhythm. Arthur cooked more, walked more, sat with Sharon in the evenings without filling the space with plans or explanations. The silence between them wasn't anxious anymore. It was shared. One afternoon, Arthur placed the plaque in a box and slid it into the closet. Not hidden, just no longer central. Its meaning had changed. It marked a chapter, not a definition. What remained felt quieter, but stronger. A sense of self that didn't depend on permission. Faith that no longer needed to be rewarded to be real. The ability to meet the day without resentment. Arthur understood now that success had tested him less than its absence had. And he had held. One evening, as the city lights came on outside the window, Arthur sat with Sharon beside him and felt something settle into place. He had lost what he worked for, but not who he had become. And that finally felt like something no life could take back.